Hi everybody, it's Laura. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel. Today I have another layout that I made using a My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit. The kit that I'm using in this video was from March. I wanted to make a layout that was a little bit more youthful and fun. A lot of times I use a lot of florals and I just wanted to try something a little bit different. So I decided that I was going to use some of the really pretty pattern papers in this collection. This kit featured the Simple Stories collection, Simple Vintage Spring Garden, and it was really bright and cheery, and I thought it would be perfect for the photo that I'm going to use, which I'll show you in just a little bit. So I used my die cutting machine and I cut out hearts in different sizes. I have a large heart and I layered two cardstock hearts on top of each other. And then I put the pattern paper on top of that. And then I inked the edges with some Distress Oxide. And then I did the same thing with those smaller hearts that you see in the centers. And I really like to give elements on my page a little bit of dimension. So that's why I had many layers of paper. But that step can be skipped. You can just use a smaller heart on top of a larger heart if you would like to use this technique. I planned where I wanted the hearts and then I drew a pencil mark so I would remember where I wanted them. Now I'm going to try to make a paint color that matches each of these hearts. And I knew that I would have to do a little bit of mixing in order to get the right colors. So I'm using these Waverly paints. I purchased these a long time ago at Tuesday Morning and I've gotten a lot of use out of them. For the yellow heart, I started off with some yellow and then I added some white and then I added a little touch of brown because the yellow seemed a little bit too bright to me. And my idea is to make some irregular lines with my paintbrush. Now, of course, when I'm trying to make straight lines or make something look very symmetrical and perfect, it ends up looking irregular. And then when I try to make something look irregular, it's not as easy as I think it's going to be. And earlier, you may have noticed that I used my ruler and I measured where I wanted to put all 4 lines of color because if I don't, I know that it will look terrible and it will be all off center. So for me, measuring is really important. I've seen people wing it, but that's just not the way I'm able to work. I'm not going to have all of the hearts even with each other. I'm going to have some a little higher and some a little lower. My first thought was to keep all the hearts on a straight line, but then when I played around with the layout, I thought it looked better with the hearts a little staggered. I thought it looked more interesting. So while I wanted the lines to be irregular, I also didn't want them to be very different in their width or very different in the distance they were apart from each other. So that's what I'm attempting to do. And then to make the strokes of paint look a little bit less regular, I'm adding a little bit of white in so that some areas will be a little bit lighter and some will be a little bit darker. None of the paints were a really close match right out of the jar. I had to do a little bit of mixing. Generally, I had to mix in some white to make them a little bit lighter. If you want to dull a color down or make it a little bit of a deeper color, you can always add the complementary color. And I know that I've heard people warn don't add too much of a complementary color because it'll create mud. But if you add a very small dab of that complementary color, you will be able to make the color a little bit darker and a little bit deeper, and it works really well. And when I say complementary color, I'm talking about the color that's across from that color on the color wheel. And if you don't have a color wheel, you can just Google it and you'll get many images of color wheels. So in any case, now I'm going to add some splatters in the same color of the stripe to each of the stripes. And I watered down the colors that I had quite a bit in order to do this. And it's a good thing that I left the paint on the table because usually I try to clean up, but in this case I was able to just add some water to the paint that I had already mixed and then splatter it onto the background. And of course the splatters go everywhere, but my goal was to try to get them mainly on the matching color stripe, even though some went everywhere. And this acrylic paint is pretty thick, so I had to add quite a lot of water to it in order to get it to splatter across the background. I'm kind of laughing now thinking how I want it to be irregular, but I want it to be even, but I want it to be neat, and then I want to have a lot of splatters, make it messy. That's just the way my brain is working on this particular layout. I continue to add a lot of splatters, especially at the bottom of each of the strips of color in the area where the heart is going to be. I didn't include all the footage because it went on for a while, but you could see that I did quite a bit of splattering down in that area. Once I was done adding the splatters and they had dried, I decided that I wanted to add some texture to each of the stripes. So I'm going to take some Ranger texture paste. I'm going to use those same colors that I used to make the stripes, and I'm going to use this beautiful Vicki Boutin heart stencil, and I'm going to spread the texture paste through the stencil. Now for the yellow, I use the hearts, but I'm going to also use another stencil for the green and the pink stripes, and I'm going to use the same one for the blue stripe. And I found this to be really cool because the Ranger texture paste mixed with the paint made such a cool effect on the background. I don't think you're going to be able to see it on this video, but it almost looked like the spots that had the texture paste were laminated, and I really love the way that that looked. And I just kind of got lucky that it turned out that way because I didn't know that that was going to happen, that the effect was going to be shiny modeling paste. And I think that it goes along really well with the feel of this layout. And then I allowed that yellow stripe to dry before I moved on to the green stripe. And here you can see that I'm using the other stencil, which I believe is also a Vicki Boutin stencil. And both of these stencils were from my Creative Scrapbook limited edition kits. Now, I wasn't sure if I had the stenciling down far enough on the stripe, so I decided that I was going to add just a little bit more at the bottom. And I'm not sure if I waited for that first round of green texture paste to dry before I added that last circle, but luckily I didn't smear anything. And then I was thinking that I didn't want the modeling paste to go too far past the line of the stripe, so I went in with my palette knife and I found that I could scrape away the areas that I didn't want. So now I've added some texture paste to all 4 of those strips. And just to make sure that I don't mislead you, I used Ranger texture paste, which is a little bit different from the modeling paste that I usually use. And so if you want to get this laminated look, check out the Ranger texture paste. I love adding splatters of white acrylic paint, and I just added a bunch. But I found that I thought the splatters were a little bit too large. I wanted to have a lot of smaller splatters. So I'm using this fan brush that I really never use, and I should use it more often because it made some really nice fine splatters. And then I also wanted to have a couple of black splatters, not too many, but I am going to have some touches of black on the layout. So I thought that it would be nice to have a couple of them in the background to tie the whole thing together. And then once again, this is watered down black acrylic paint. The photo that I'm using is of my older daughter Danielle on the left and her really good friend Lauren on the right. And they met in college. Danielle met her in her sophomore year, and I was really happy because she's a real true friend. I think sometimes in college people get put together that aren't necessarily compatible, but Lauren was a really great match for her, so I was really happy to see she was friends with such a nice person. Danielle's college was 5 hours away, so I couldn't get to her right away if she needed me. Luckily, that never happened, but it was a relief to know that she had somebody that would be there for her if I wasn't able to get there for her. But in any case, so I have mounted the photo on some white cardstock and then again on some black cardstock. Whenever I'm double mounting my photo, I try to make sure that I make one of the mats a different size than the other. I don't like the two of them to be the same. Just those little details, I think, add a little bit of interest to the page. And then I used a sticker from the kit. It says Sunshine. Sunshine is going to be part of the title. At this stage of the layout, I thought that was the title, but I end up adding on to it a little bit. And then I color coordinated the butterflies with the stripes of paint. For the yellow, green, and pink butterflies, I used a chipboard piece. And then I either used a blue one or there wasn't a blue butterfly, so I ended up using an ephemera piece for the blue butterfly. And then I also used some more butterflies more toward the top of the layout, and I have those going in a diagonal to the right-hand side. And I added a little flower right next to the word sunshine. And then I added some photo corners. I decided to put 2 yellow photo corners on the left and 2 green ones on the right, because those are the areas of color that the photo is overlapping. So at this point, everything is color coordinated. I have all the yellows together, the greens, the blues, the pinks. I'm going to switch that up in a little while. I ink the edges of the photo corners and the title and the little flower. I don't ink the edges of the butterflies because they have that white edge, which I wanted to keep because I wanted there to be contrast between the butterflies and the background, but I do ink the other elements, including these little hearts that I'm making right here. I used a punch to make these little hearts. I punched out hearts in all 4 different colors, and then I also punched out some hearts from white cardstock. I'm layering 2 pieces of white cardstock on top of each other and then layering the pattern paper on top of the 2 white hearts. And once again, just like with the other hearts that I incorporated into the page, this just gives them a little bit of dimension. Not a whole lot, but just enough, I think, to make them look a little bit more interesting. And then I used some Distress Oxides and I inked the edges. So I used Scattered Straw for the yellow hearts, Stormy Sky for the blue ones. I used Peeled Paint and Bundled Sage on the green elements on the page, and then Victorian Velvet for the pink. I'm also going to include this sentiment that says, "Let your dreams blossom." I'm inking the edges of that with pink because that's going to go on the pink stripe on the page. I placed the sentiment on the pink stripe in the upper right-hand corner, and then I started adding all of those little hearts to the page. This time, though, I'm not color coordinating them. I am adding the green hearts to the yellow stripe. I'm going to add pink to the green, yellow to the blue, and blue to the pink. And just to let you know that initially I had planned to match these colors too, but when I placed them on the layout, I just thought it looked a little bit boring, and I ended up thinking that I might want to try mixing up the colors, and once I did that, I liked that a whole lot better, so that's the idea that I went with. I can't always show you everything in the videos because they would be ridiculously long and nobody would want to watch my whole thought process, but I do like to let you know that I don't always go right to the idea that I end up using. A lot of times I will think of other ideas and then end up rejecting them and going with something else. But whenever I'm not sure about which of 2 or more ideas that I want to go with, I will ask my daughter Danielle or my husband. Danielle is very honest. She's very sweet and very kind, but she's very honest about what she thinks I should do. And my husband is a little bit too nice sometimes, and I have really been encouraging him to be very forthcoming with me because that really helps me with my process. Sometimes when I'm doing a layout, I get so caught up in the process that I don't see certain things, and it really helps me to have another opinion. So this is where I was thinking it would look cute if I added some phrases to each of the strips of color, and there were a whole bunch of them on the Simple Stories sticker sheet. So I picked out the sentiments that I thought went with the photo, and then I added those to each of the strips, but I did not end up liking those. I just thought it was a little bit too much. I was going a little bit too crazy. So what I decided to do was just pick a sentiment in each color and put the sentiment underneath the heart, and then I removed the other sentiments from the layout. And I think I like that better. It was just getting a little bit too crazy before, too many different things going on one layout. I wanted to bring some more touches of black to the layout, so I'm adding some very, very tiny black jewels to the centers of the butterflies. And I get these from a company called Want to Scrap. When I go to scrapbooking conventions, they're often there, and so I pick up these little tiny jewels. They have them in lots of different colors. And then to the little hearts, I added some pearls. I looked in my stash. I keep my stash of pearls and all of my jewels and enamel dots in color-coded containers. So whatever pearls that I found that matched these colors, those were the ones that I used. And I also get the self-adhesive pearls from Want to Scrap, and then another booth that has quite a few jewels and pearls and items like that is the Eyelet Outlet, and they're at a lot of the scrapbooking conventions near me. So I go to both of them and I pick out my embellishments. And I generally go to 2 scrapbooking conventions each year, and they are both in the summer. So I have to plan really well for my year to make sure I have enough of these pearls and other embellishments. I ended up switching out those tiny little jewels for some larger ones because I thought that the other ones were just a little bit too small for the layout. To highlight the flower next to the title a little bit more, I added a yellow pearl. And then I decided to extend the title by using a line of a song. The song is My Girl, and so I decided to call the layout Sunshine on a Cloudy Day. There were 4 words I had to add, which worked out perfectly, 1 word per heart. And I used some stickers. I believe these were also from my Creative Scrapbook kit. And the layout is complete, and here are some close-ups. I forgot to mention that I didn't have a piece of yellow paper that I wanted that was big enough to make that heart. So you can see there, I kind of pieced it together, and it worked out fine. I don't think it's super noticeable. But I wanted to say thank you so much for watching this video. I really, really appreciate you watching my videos, everybody. I so appreciate the likes and the views and those really sweet comments. And I have not been answering the comments in the past few days, but I will get back to that. I really, truly do appreciate them. Don't forget to check out the link in the description box to the My Creative Scrapbook website where you can order a subscription to the limited edition kit or any of the beautiful kits that they offer. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.